Thanks everyone for joining. We're super excited to welcome all of you to this new event of the Management and Leadership Club of Neoma alumni that Maria and myself have the honor to run. We're happy to welcome Jay Samit, who's dialing from California, and Ilan, dialing probably from cold France. Jay and Ilan are two well-known figures of the tech world in the US, and we hope that's going to be a great exchange. We just start by introducing the speakers. Before we start, I just want you to know that this conference is recorded and made available. At the end of the exchange, we'll have a Q&A session. You'll have plenty of opportunities to ask your questions through the chat. I suggest Naufal introduces us to Jay and tells us the story of how he met Jay, actually, and Maria will then introduce Ilan. So Naufal?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Naufal Filani, and I'm actually an alumni of Neoma Paris, 2019, so 2019. And actually in February 2020, just before COVID, I read the book, so Disruptez-vous, actually the English version. And it helped me so much just after graduating, especially in my job search and just having a new way of thinking. And I just decided to write a post on LinkedIn sharing the best advices and exercises from the book. And I used one of Jay's main advice on the book just to be bold. So I tagged Jay on LinkedIn, and I just thought he won't respond. But 5 minutes afterwards, he responded with a thank you. And then he responded with, if I knew any French publisher, because the book is now out in more than 10 languages. And I knew nothing about publishing or book publishing or anything. So I was like, yeah, sure, I can help. So I spent the whole year cold calling publishers and just looking for a deal. And now in December 2020, we had a deal. And November 10, the book is out in French. So Disruptez-vous. And yeah, Jay is, besides from being an author, he's a serial entrepreneur. He was the vice chairman of Deloitte, so Deloitte. He was head of head of business development at Sony Music, Universal, Emmy Records. He worked with big entrepreneurs like Bill Gates, Reid Hoffman. He actually helped grow LinkedIn, eBay, and 100 other companies. And yeah, happy to have him here today with us at Neoma.
Yeah, thank you. And we are also with Ilan Benaim. And so, Ilan, thank you to be here also. Ilan is also a well-known figure of the tech industry and has been the president of Neoma alumni since 1 year now. Ilan's career... Sorry?
Neoma alumni is not very tech, that's more.
Yes, but your career... So your career started as a big disruption, and we thought it would be great to have your experience and to share with Jay today. So in the early 2000s, you started your own disruption, and you're starting your startup 6 months before graduating from school. So it was your first disruption. And the second one was to be the co-founder of a totally new market. Because you are the co-founder of VP.com. It was vendprivé.com in 2000. So now, 20 years down the line, VP.com has an income at 3.8 billion euros and employs more than 6,000 people across 14 countries. So it's a big success. As shown by VP Success, one of your main expertise is to deliver exponential growth within organization. And since few years, you also act as an investor through your personal company. And you participate in more than 30 startups over the world, and you intend to significantly enlarge your portfolio in the next month. So if someone's between us want to look for an investor, Ilan is your guy. So you understand that we thought it was really interesting today to have the experience of Ilan and Jay and to share with us their experience.
Cool. So yeah, I thought it might be cracking to hear with the question to Jay, just to explain to us the concept of self-disruption and how one can disrupt their own beliefs and thrive in the future after the disruption of the pandemic.
Sure. So when I first wrote the book, I spent 5 years traveling the globe, explaining to everybody that whether by choice or circumstance, everyone's career will be disrupted. With the pandemic, I don't have to make that argument anymore. I think that's kind of proved the point. But personal disruption is different. It's the things that are holding you back in life is that little voice in your head that tells you that you can't. And once you can get past that, your parents and teachers tried to steer you from feeling failure and pain when failing is a very important part of the growth process. So once you get over that fear, once you get past that, and you see that you can change yourself, like everybody thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves. And once you can realize that you're malleable, changing things in business is easy compared to that. So the book is teaching you how to break down the steps in the same way you would break down a business problem and get past your limitations. In one sentence, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, and you provide a method to apply that. What brought you to set up such a method?
I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. I didn't set out to create billion-dollar companies and do all the things that still surprise me. But when I got out of school, there were no jobs. And you're going to see half of all jobs in the world automate out of existence over the next 5 years. Not just blue-collar jobs, but middle management, lawyers, accountants. AI systems will replace this. So I tried to figure it out. And once you see how easy it is to start something, grow something, there's no gatekeepers blocking you from capital. You're one click away from 5 billion consumers. Every 32 hours, there is a self-made billionaire in US dollars. Think about that. What did you do this past weekend? You're a bunch of slackers. You didn't make your billion. So what are they doing differently? And I've had the good fortune in my career to work with a lot of the billionaires that are household names, Richard Branson and Elon Musk and all these people, before they were big names. And they're no different than you and I. They're just more stubborn. Because the only person that can stop you is you. And you will find rejection. You will find things. And you will fail. But when you fail, you don't end up where you started. You either earn or you learn. But either way, it propels you forward. And so that's really what got me on this journey. And once you get to a point where you build companies and run companies, it got kind of boring. It's not about the game of who can make the most money, at least not for me. It's what's the greatest impact you can have. And so as I watched, especially with the pandemic, the middle class got wiped out. The 100 wealthiest people on the planet in the past year and a half doubled their net worth. Not doubled what they make in a year, doubled their entire existence. From when I wrote this book in English, Elon Musk was worth $2 billion. Now Elon Musk is worth $300 billion. So what are the people at the top doing differently? Can that be taught? And is it available to everyone? So the last point on this is the one great thing that came out of the pandemic, which has been a horrible experience for everybody, is it finally proved remote workers work, which means you're no longer limited to hire on your team the best people 5 or 10 kilometers from you. You can hire the best people on the planet, which also means you don't have to live in Silicon Valley or New York or even in Europe or North America. You can live anywhere and have access to talent and customers everywhere. So there's no more excuse for why you can't create a unicorn.
And Elon, how does disruption relate to your journey in entrepreneurship?
No,
Go ahead.
yeah, sorry. No, thank you, Trey, because what I experience as disruption is I use disruption to find solution to problems that I have in my business. And you're telling that, and you're learning in your book that we need to disrupt ourselves to be more efficient. So maybe I did that too intentionally. But for me, I had to face when you're facing a lot of customer satisfaction, you have a downside effect, because when we created the service, it was so appreciated by consumers that without doing marketing, we had huge growth. But the problem with handling huge volumes, and if you want to maintain quality, you're going to have a big impact on your costs. And so a lot of people, what they're doing, they're cutting quality. When volumes are going up, they're trying to industrialize things. But when you industrialize things to reduce the costs, you impact the quality. So if you impact the quality on a medium to long term, you're going to impact your volumes and your growth. So it was like an impossible equation that we had to face. And how to do that, how to face that impossible equation, it was to disrupt, to do things completely different, to innovate. For me, innovating is just copy what exists and improve it a little bit and very fast. And in the concept of disruption, for me, there's something that is immediate. You need to do that now. It's not a long-term process. It has to be done now, which is complicated with organization that tends to be very stable. But you need to disrupt them by pushing them to think differently and to do things differently. Otherwise, it's impossible to have huge growth. You will have breaks. You will have people saying, no, it's not possible. And that's the worst thing to face. So I completely align, but I never theorized it on a personal level. It was for me just a tool to improve my top line and to remove the brakes.
Yeah. And Jay, you talk also about innovation, as Elon said in your book, and about the good moment to innovate. And sometimes companies innovate not; it's too early, and it doesn't work. And sometimes it's good, the good moments.
It's never too early if you manage your capital. Yeah. So if you're going, it's like surfing. Typical California example, the wave will come, but if you get too tired paddling out there, then you're going to miss it. And if you wait till it breaks and it's all out there, everybody else is going out there too. So don't be afraid of being ahead of the game. I've done this enough that there were times when I thought it was obvious to everybody how the world was going to change, and you wait and wait. Things like eBay and LinkedIn were not instant successes, and I'm on the board of a startup that Forbes just said is an overnight unicorn. We're now worth over $1 billion. We're in year 7 of the startup. It's not overnight. So the key is to learn how to figure out when your idea is worth sticking with and when it sucks. Most ideas, and this shocks audiences what I tell them, are really bad ideas because they're obvious big footprint ideas. And it's not till you start giving it in the hands of customers that you get the feedback to find the things that you wouldn't know that were obvious, that no one knows, that gives you that insight. That's why so many companies pivot. My favorite example in the book is for those that are young and think dating was always swiping on your phone. There used to be online dating, and it was a still picture, and you read about the person, and you emailed back and forth. And when broadband came out about 10 years ago, 3 friends of mine said, wait a second, we're going to put up videos so that way you can see the person's personality, hear their voice, their accent. We're going to make a fortune. It was called Tune In Hookup. It was a beautiful site. The interface, everything was perfect. Great business plan. One problem. The only people putting up dating videos were complete losers. The first video is a guy standing in front of the elephant at the zoo of why you should go out with him, because that is so sexy. But they looked at the data and they saw something that wasn't in their business plan. Nobody wanted to date these losers, but they sure wanted to show their friends these videos. So they changed the name of Tune and Hookup to YouTube and became billionaires without a penny in revenue. And YouTube was bought for about $1.5 billion. Everybody thought Google was crazy. Today, that's how much revenue it generates every week.
Yeah, it's a great example.
I think I love this example from the book. Like a lot of people, when they want to transition into entrepreneurship, they might think, I don't have the money. I know you very big on what you call in the book OPM. I don't know how that translates into French, but the concept.
Well, you should know how it translates to French.
So it doesn't sound as good.
I can have that. So those are the letters for other people's money. And so most people think of you can get investors to give you money, but then you got to pay them back or make money. And you could borrow money, but then you got to pay that back. But there's another source, which I refer to as other people's money, which is though you have a new product or service, you don't have a new target audience. That audience is already doing things. So if you're targeting senior citizens or you're targeting kids or women, there's other companies, non-competitive, that also sell products to that audience. And in most cases, they're lazy. They've been doing the same thing. They don't have a new idea. So if you can solve for that big company how to reach that audience, they can spend their marketing dollars to make you successful. So the example that I had is when Apple had iTunes and the iPod and was taking over the world, Sony had nothing. So I had built Sony's version of iTunes, but Apple was spending $100 million a year marketing iTunes, and my budget was zero. So I looked, who is in trouble? What company has a problem? And this happened to be the year the McDonald's sales went down because there was a movie called Super Size Me that shows you eat McDonald's, you die. So I said, okay, if I can solve McDonald's problem, how can that help my music store? Make a long story short, I approached McDonald's with the idea of doing TV commercials, buy a Big Mac, get a free track, and put a code on each one that gives you a free song. Worked out the deal. McDonald's spent $60 million in advertising. They drove 20 million paying customers to my website the very first week. That's using other people's money. And I've done that hundreds of times.
Ilan, I think it maybe resonate for you because VP works, I suppose, with a lot of partnerships. Could you share maybe with us your experience on this subject?
Yeah, it's not only partnership. It's actually when we started, we were broke. We didn't have money. And we started in 2000, which was the e-commerce bubble that just bursted. So no VC on earth were planning to finance e-commerce. So we had to innovate, disrupt. So we said, instead of doing an open e-commerce, we're going to do a closed one. In order to enter our e-commerce platform, you're going to need a login, a password. And before, in 2001, it was an SMS too. So you need a one-time use of that. And we did that because we said, okay, we started with 200 people, friends, families. We gathered email and we invited them to the sale on February 12th, 2001. And at the beginning of the sale, there were 200 people coming. At the end, more than 1,000. Why? Because word of mouth. And we said, okay, so our marketing should be not buying people to bring them here. We should invest a lot of money in the product. What are we selling? And we chose at that time to go on discount because people, they needed a reason to buy on the internet. Is it more convenient or is it cheaper? We chose the strategy to be cheaper. So we put all our money, our investment in how can we secure discounts on the internet. And actually the first way is a brand doesn't want to be on the internet discounted because they say it's gonna challenge my network. So if you create private space on the internet for brands and telling them, we're going to control the content. If someone logs, we know if he's from Paris or from Marseille, from Lyon, from Germany. And we can control what we're showing them. We can control the price we display and everything. So from the beginning of VP, we had that kind of personalized content through the logging. It's an e-commerce platform where everyone has to be logged. It's like Facebook. You have to be logged to see what's inside. And that gives us a control on the content because we needed to tell the brand, you can do this kind of the internet because it's a private place. And that's how we managed to have discounted goods directly from brands on the internet.
Cool. Sorry.
But the first reason is because we didn't have no money on those. If I had money, I would do advertising on TV, take all the Stanford and Harvard books to see what should be done, because I was 24. So, but when you're 24 and you don't have money, you just...
But you bring up a great point. Money makes you lazy.
Yeah, exactly. Too much money.
You know, whenever I hire like CMOs or whatever, I'm not impressed by somebody that was the CMO of Coke. You know, you have a $2 billion budget and you're going to show me these amazing commercials with top stars. Yeah, I'm more impressed with you had no budget and how did you crack the market? And, you know, I think it's great training. I think your business went farther because you weren't capitalized.
Exactly.
Because you don't learn lessons.
We never raised the dime because we said it's going to be an entrepreneur adventure. So we need to make another disruption, a profitable e-commerce company from day one, which was impossible at that time because there was a lot of capex, there was a lot of fixed costs and everything, but we didn't have the money to so we had to be sustainable and independent from foreign investors. So we had to be profitable, and the only way of doing that is to convince brand, instead of giving 15% margin, to give us 40% margin, which was we need to innovate a lot in sales.
And probably many of the people watching think that you're the exception to the rule. Oh, everybody gets all this funding, when in fact you are the norm. You know, there were 3 guys in San Francisco who couldn't pay their rent, but they knew that Macworld was coming, the Apple convention. So they got some air mattresses and they said, you can sleep on our floor and save money because all the hotels are full. That became Airbnb. It was because they were broke, okay? And so that necessity is solving a problem. And that's the other key tenet in my book. Entrepreneurs don't sell things, they solve things. If you solve a problem for 5 people, you have friends. Solve for 1 million, you make money. You solve for 1 billion, you change the world. And that's what's so powerful nowadays is the infrastructure connecting us. That's all been set up by the big guys. That's all there. And think of it this way. When the iPhone came out 10 years ago, Apple didn't make apps. They made a platform for anybody to create wealth and solve problems. And in the first year, here's 2 of the top 10 apps. We forget that nobody understood this. One was a game with cats, and the other was a fart app. I don't know the translation.
Yeah.
You know, there was no Robinhood, there was no Uber. So now I'm obsessed with augmented reality, that we're now going to have heads-up display. What new problems can we solve?
Yeah.
And Google, a client, is spending billions to make sure they're here, because if Google doesn't own this space for search, they're out of business. We're not going to look at phones. If Facebook can't figure out how to be there, they're out of business. If Apple can't figure out how to get you to buy their glasses, they're out of business. Yet each of these companies isn't making the solutions. They're spending tens of billions of dollars to allow you to become wealthy. It's the most exciting time that I've ever seen, because you know what's coming, you know when it's coming, and you know the adoption rate. And so, you know, if I was starting businesses again, that's where I'd be spending my time. Solve a problem in any industry where heads-up displays make and solve a problem.
And yes, you share a lot of success stories. And for people who listen to us, which mindset should we have if we want to solve problems and maybe disrupt a market or ourselves?
Oh, what a soft pedal question. You have to have a growth mindset. In my newest book, which isn't in French yet, called Future Proofing You, I take a homeless immigrant who grew up on welfare, his parents were on welfare, and I literally trick him into having a growth mindset because I didn't take the time for him to organically build the confidence. I told him that I interviewed over 100 candidates and he was the only one who could become a self-made millionaire in a year, and I was going to show him how. And because some old guy with a white beard said it, he believed it. And just that change of mindset changed his entire life. By the end of the first month, he had made almost $70,000. Spoiler alert, he made $1 million in under a year. But it all starts with that belief system. And a way to trick yourself into this, and I do it every morning when I shave, when you look in the mirror, say two things. Today can be better than yesterday, and I have the power to make it so. Now that sounds like some hippie California, speak, but there's science behind it. Because what you're doing is you're lighting up your synaptic nerves. You're releasing endorphins that make you feel good, which makes you open to see possibility, which makes you more likable to other people, because you're going to be a Pied Piper if you're going to start something. You've got to get people following you to want to invest, people following you to want to come work for you. You're going to have to go out and do an awful lot of getting people on board. And it all starts with your attitude. That's half the battle. And it's that simple to disrupt yourself.
Thank you.
I think one of your main strengths, Jay, after working with you this year, is you really open up. Like, I become resourceful just by speaking with you regularly. And yeah, even I see opportunities that I didn't see before. And I think that's even when your interview with Tom Bilyeu, that's your main strength. And how do you think, like, practically can someone cultivate that skill to be creative? And
now, Feli, if I may, there's also one thing. We have a European culture of refusing people that make errors.
Yeah.
Right. And we had the same education, the same business school.
With a better education.
Yeah. We think it's very good education, but they didn't teach us to learn from our mistakes. Yeah. They teach us to hide the mistake, to put them away and not to tell them, not to share them. And for me, I consider that I learn every day because I do mistakes every day. And when the people are saying I'm a successful person, I say, yeah, maybe I did less mistake than good things. That's a balance of things. So really, it's a mindset of the European education that is towards perfection. Hide your mistakes, don't show them, don't be proud of them. And that's something we should learn from Jay for that.
Yeah.
You're spot on. As I travel around the world, and this book's in over a dozen languages all throughout Asia, everywhere, most cultures have a fear of failure, a shame, an embarrassment, all those types of things. In the US, we have a horrible educational system, okay? That's why none of us speak a second language. I can tell you all the things that we're failing at, but the one differentiator that keeps us, innovating is we have no shame. Look at who we elected president a couple of years ago. I mean, we have no embarrassment of failing. When you watch The Simpsons and Homer has a get-rich-quick scheme, it all blows up and then life goes on. That's our mentality, and that will serve you well. Walt Disney's first company went bankrupt. Two guys that I worked with at the start of my career had what I thought was one of the most brilliant ideas. And again, we're going back a bunch of years. What if you hook up traffic signals, traffic lights, to a computer to reduce traffic? Think how great, the Champs-Élysées would be with synchronized lights. So they built the system, they went to city planners, and nobody knew what they were talking about. This was the 1970s. And so Trafo Data went bankrupt. That company was started by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. Their second company, Microsoft, did a little bit better. So if you had stopped at your first failure and said, I'm a failure, you wouldn't have Ford Motor Company. You wouldn't have all these things that were people's second shot.
Yeah.
There is no shame in failing. There is shame in throwing in the towel and giving up.
Yeah.
Because, for me, the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. And the only way you're going to achieve anything is by taking risks. And I've run companies where I've had hundreds of thousands of employees. And my direct reports for at least 20 years, I've said the same thing too. I say two things when you come work for me. One, you don't work for me. I work for you. You tell me what you need. And if I give it to you and you don't do your job, then we have a problem. If I don't give it to you, then it's my fault. Number two, if you work for me for a year and you don't make a mistake, I will fire you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I want you as a boss.
You have a liar in front of you if it's the case.
And Ilan, maybe did you have this mindset when you co-founded VP, or did you do yourself a self transformation?
No, but actually, Maria, we say that we thought that the world was divided between small players and big players, and small players were agile and big players are slow. Yeah. And now what we see is that worldwide competition is between fast and slow. And now we have huge players that are very fast and they have exponential growth. Yeah. How do they do that? Why our organization are slowing down? And I learned that in the US, they're saying, you always think that you reach the top level of the market. No, actually, you're slowing down because you stop making mistakes or you stop accepting doing mistakes. So actually, the breaks are inside your organization. You're blaming the market all the time. No, the market is changing, but you're not changing. So, of course, you're not adapting correctly. So the problem, it's not outside, it's inside. And that's what I learned in the US. And that's why you take all Google, the GAFA companies, they started in a garage. They didn't have the money at first. They were not super well funded. And they copied and improved, and they kept that kind of mentality. Nowadays, when you go to these big boys, it's incredible how much they congratulate the people that are fixing the problem, not firing the people that do problems, that generated the problems. That's the thing.
To your earlier point, you brought up a great point about this sense that it has to be perfect. And the biggest mistake a startup can do is wait till their thing that they're building is absolutely perfect to enter the market.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. My friend Reid Hoffman had a great expression. He created PayPal and LinkedIn. He said, an entrepreneur is somebody that jumps off the cliff and assembles the airplane on the way down. You want to get out there as quickly as possible because you'll learn more by being in the marketplace than anything you could possibly do sitting alone in your office, even if you have the smartest team in the world.
Exactly.
And you have to be in a permanent state of beta because the world is changing at faster than Darwinian rates. We are in an era of endless innovation like has never existed. And to your earlier point, when I became number 3 of Sony, I've done 3 jobs at the big companies, and the rest of the time it's rather sit in an empty room and start companies. The first thing they did 10 days in there was, we need your 3-year plan. I go, my what? Your 3-year plan of what you're going to do and how much money. And I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. This is a giant company. So I know how giant companies play. I'll make my first year go really low so I get the giant bonus that they pay. Okay. And then year 2 and 3, I guess I'll get fired. So I did that, make a huge, back up the truck of money for year 1. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm in trouble. And then they come into my office and they go, okay, we need your 3-year plan. I go, what do you mean? I go, every year they do a 3-year plan. They never look at year 2 and 3. That's why Sony went from being, one of the top brands in the world to a wheezing dinosaur. They couldn't adapt. They saw their competition as other companies in the same sector. They didn't see Apple coming and taking their lunch. Nokia used to have 50% market share of phones. They stopped innovating. Exactly. You become complacent, or you try to fight last year's battle again. And there's never last year's battle. There's always a new battle. And keeping that is harder than most people realize because success makes you lazy. But luckily, there's enough change that you can constantly innovate nowadays as the world gets much more connected. And the only competitive advantage any company has in the 21st century is getting insight from their data faster than the competition gets insight from theirs. And I will tell you, having worked with some of the largest brands out there, they are drowning in data and having no insight because they're not paying attention to the wealth of knowledge that they have. And that's your advantage, because when you're starting, you don't have to do market research. You're living the data every day. You're getting instant feedback of what's working, what's not, and you can constantly tweak it. When Elon Musk started PayPal, he and his brother had one computer, okay? They kept the site up during the day. They coded at night. They slept on the floor of the office. They didn't have an apartment. And that's all it took to get the thing going. And that's the mentality. And you can still do that. Jack Ma, didn't admit this to the rest of the world for a bunch of years. Alibaba, biggest e-commerce platform in the world. He was 5 years into Alibaba before he owned his own PC. He never knew how to use a PC. He just knew the internet was going to change commerce, and China was a big place to do commerce, and the rest was connected dots. So the other thing that you'll learn in my book is you only need two things for success: insight, which we were talking about, and perseverance. Everything else can be hired. Everybody on this call has written as much computer code as Steve Jobs, who built the world's first $1 trillion company, which is zero. Steve couldn't write code. Steve wasn't an engineer. Wozniak was probably the smartest person about computers at that moment in history, but Woz couldn't make a dime because he wasn't that sales type, business type person. He was just a genius. So that combination solved things. So hire not people that are like you. Don't partner with a mirror image of you. Find somebody that has the strengths that you lack. Be honest about what you're good at and what you're not. And anything can be hired. Most people would rather just get a job. I don't understand this mentality. But you're either going to work your butt off making someone else's dream come true or your dream come true. And most jobs pay you enough to show up, but not enough to care. So why not put that effort into something that gives you freedom? And, so that's why I do what I do. We need more entrepreneurs. We need a global middle class.
Jay, thank you. That's a great insight. There's a question now I'd like to ask you both, actually. You were mentioning the fact that we have a wealth of knowledge, as you put it. Considering this wealth of knowledge and the fact that both of you now have, I would say, 20 plus years of experience into your entrepreneurial venture, I don't want to make you sound old, but let's say 20 years. Is there something that you would do differently today, considering what you know now about how things went, and what kind of feedback have you got on what you've been through?
Regrets?
You want to go first?
Yeah, no. Regrets? No, I never had regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets, because you need to think forward always at the time. So actually, when I make a mistake, I'm saying, okay, I'm a human. Mistakes are in my DNA. When I was born, when I was a little, I walked with my hands and everything. I was crouching, and then one day I got up, but not one day to the other. I learned that. I learned how to walk. I learned how to run. So it's part of my thing. Me, I have to learn every day. I need to read every day. I need to see and open my mind every day. That's the beauty of the thing. It's the beauty of the human mind. I don't think that you learn how to make a great enterprise at school. You learn some skills, but you're going to learn in your market, in your thing, how to execute well. I'm always telling young entrepreneurs that are saying, hey, I don't have an idea. I say, we don't care about the idea. What I care is how you're going to execute the idea. That's the thing. If you want an idea, it's easy. You can become a hairdresser on Sundays, because in Paris, you have no hairdresser on Sunday. People are working all the time. So it's not about the idea, it's how you do it. And it's not about the money neither. There's tons of money available on the market. It's why will they give this money to you? Why would they invest in you? Because you do things different, because you execute well, because you understand your mistake, because you change. That's what I look when I invest in companies. To entrepreneurs that are willing to admit their mistakes. That's the most important thing for me. People that can change, because the first idea won't be the one that will be successful at the end.
So great question. And in actually my second book, I thought about this question a lot, because there was one gaping thing that I would absolutely change. I was a lot smarter when I was young. I was arrogant and knew everything. I was like, if all these people are so smart, why didn't they start the business that I started, right? And with that arrogance, I shut down getting mentors. You cannot fly solo. It's one of the 12 truths in my other book, Future Proofing You.
Completely agree.
And you're going to need a series of mentors in your career. I mean, Bill Gates' mother begged him to go reach out to Warren Buffett when he became the richest man in the world. And you're like, why does he need a mentor? Well, maybe there's problems that billionaires face that you're not prepared for. Yeah. Well, at every step, and LinkedIn is such a great tool for finding people that want to be your mentor. And if you have this mindset that life is only a dog-eat-dog, zero-sum game, there's this much money, so either you get it or I get it. That's not where wealth is created. Entrepreneurs actually create wealth from thin air. When I start a company and I sell you 10% and then it becomes worth something, that money came from thin air. So these people that want to help you understand that they're participating in something that benefits everybody and it validates them. And you can accelerate your career so much faster by being open to mentorship. And that would probably be the single biggest change. I didn't have a board in my first company. And I will tell you, on the bad years, the mistakes that haunt you, we're all human, is my first company, at one point, I had 7 of the top 10 best-selling video games in the world. And another video game company offered me 1/3 of their company for all of mine. And I'm in my 20s. I don't know anything about it. I go, well, if they take over my company and they mess it up, I'll end up with nothing, right? I didn't know how to structure deals or anything. Well, that company, is Activision today, okay? And that's a $10+ billion mistake, okay? Yeah, when you're having a tough time, losing $10 billion really keeps you up at night. But in reality, all those mistakes, exactly what you said, led me on other paths for other opportunities, right? I have a blessed life, so I wouldn't change anything. But my purpose of writing the books is to ease people's road, to help them get there faster, and just don't try to do it alone.
My biggest mistake was to buy 100 Bitcoins in 2007 for $100, and I lost them. It's not 10 million, but sometimes I say, okay, but yeah. I lost them. Okay, I don't find the computer. Don't know where to put it.
Yeah.
And if you have, like, both of you, if you should recommend some skills for people here to cultivate that will help them in the future and all the disruption that's caused by the pandemic, if you have some practical skills that can help them to transition afterwards to entrepreneurship, what would that be?
I think that Jay wrote a book on that, though. So they should read his book.
Read my book, yes. In seriousness, what got you to wherever you are, even if you're in the C-suite at some company, won't get you through the next 5 years. You're going to have to commit to lifelong learning. As he said, every single day. I mean, I've yet to meet someone I can't learn something from. I get paid huge bucks to predict the future when, in fact, the easiest way to predict the future is hang out with the people that are coding it, because it's not predicting. I know exactly what every company has coming out, and you see a pattern that becomes a wave and you just get in front of it. So keep learning. The other thing is you really have to learn how to communicate. Whether it's by language, whether it's writing, you're going to spend most of your career communicating your ideas to others. And I'll tell you the other huge mistake that took me 20 years into my career to realize. I used to have the genius solution for a company and get myself into that CEO and leave going, why don't they get it? Why don't they get it? And then one day it dawned on me, it's not their job to get it. They have a job. It's my job to convince people living in the past what the future will be and what that impact will be and how they can benefit from the new future. And once I put the burden on me, everything changed. You know, the success rate of every pitch went to 100%. Because you were going in not pitching your company or anything, you were going in there solving their problems for them. And everybody's open to that.
Definitely. How about you, Elon?
About what skills do we need?
Yeah.
Change the word. I think you need a mindset that I think that young people needs to be entrepreneur. Just really, I'm really telling, especially after COVID, to young students to start a company, because it's the less risky time of their life to start a company. They still have their parents. They have a girlfriend, but they don't have a wife. They don't have kids. They don't have rents. They don't have all that. So for them, and they don't have enough experience and skills to know that it's not possible. So they can do it. You know, and they don't have this barrier of things. And the other things, I think they need hard skills, which is, please learn to code. I don't want you to be a coder. I just want you to be able to speak with an engineer. So you need to move towards them. If you want to speak to them, you need to speak their language. You don't have to be fluent. You just need to understand some concepts. Just take 2 months training. And my kids, I told them when they were 4, you're going to learn 2 languages. First one is English, because everyone needs to speak English in order to communicate, even if you speak back English. And the other one is coding. So my kids, since they were 4, every week they study. They have a native English speaker, or from Iran or from anywhere in the world, talking to them in English. And also once a week, they need to go on a project and try to have fun by coding things, you know. And so they're learning by doing, making mistakes all the time. So it learns to you, because you cannot write 1,000 lines of code without mistakes. It's impossible, even if you are the most expert people on earth. But also the thing that I see, especially in Europe, and I don't think it's the case in the US, but in Europe, you have the people raising money come from business school. And then they took that money and tried to find a CTO in engineer school. But the guy in the engineer school was much brighter, and in front of the road, the guy was in the back. So it's like inverted, you know. The entrepreneur should be an engineer for me. Should be the one that holds the knowledge. But it's not the case in Europe. And me, I had to learn how to code. And I learned when I was 12. And when I had to do VP, I had to do everything. So you need to learn, and that's it. And it's not, for me, it's something that everyone should try to learn, at least have an information. You know, my father, 2 years ago, asked me one thing. He was a little bit ashamed. Ilan, can I ask you a question? But where is internet? In which country? Where is it hidden? You say, what are you talking about? You know, internet, it's about servers connected and everything. So there's no place. What? No, there should be a place where when I connect to Yahoo, where do I go? So yeah, you go to the US. And it's funny, because technology is all around us, digital is all around us, and you have people understanding how it works, and people, they're living with it, and they're scared a little bit. So if you want to do things, you don't have to be scared of doing them. So improve your technological skills. That's what I think. Because I'm a coder, that's fine.
Great, Ilan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ilan. Thanks to both of you for this exchange. I suggest we open the floor for questions. I'm sure the audience must be waiting for that. So don't hesitate to put your questions, preferably in the Q&A module. And if it's not possible, you can put them in the chat, but it's easier for us to manage. So the floor is open. Okay, so let me read Denis' question. You said that you create companies in order to make an impact, a goal that so many people say they have nowadays. How is it that there are more and more billionaires and entrepreneurs, but still 1 billion people, I would guess, suffering from hunger, 25% in the US, 15% in France? Is the mindset focused on becoming rich not the main issue of our societies? How should not the main thing that we disrupt be our ethics? So social responsibility. So which one of you want to tackle this one first?
I'm happy to tackle it. It's actually
Great,
the conclusion of my new book. We're consuming a planet and a half's worth of resources. You don't have to be a math major or an engineer to know that's not sustainable. So good business would say, get ahead of that curve and come up with sustainability solutions, and your business will be great. The world hunger part of it, the purpose of a business is to make a profit, okay? So the purpose of a business is to solve a problem that can be solved profitably. So the business is sustainable and employs people and pays a return to investors. Now, you can tie into that business solving some social issue. There's a company called Tom's Shoes in the US. For every pair of shoes you buy, they give a pair to somebody that's never had. But there's many problems that just need capital and are not businesses, okay? So I'll give you an example of a company that I'm chairman of that I think is the mix of both things. Somebody 100 years ago thought a genius idea was the best way to grow food is to cover it in poison. When we say it that way, it sounds insane. But between herbicides and pesticides, all of our foods are grown with tons of poison. So an engineer that worked for me 20 years ago and grew up on a farm, and his parents were farmers and grandparents, make a long story short, figured out a solution. We have small robots, and a swarm of them go up and down row crops and cut off the weeds. And what does this do? One, the crops are now organic, so the farmer makes 40% more, and people don't get cancer. The extra stuff doesn't run down the rivers and kill all the fish and pollute the oceans. But the most important thing that it does is farmers till the soil to break up weeds. Now that you don't have to worry about that, you don't have to till, which means you sequester carbon. The largest single source of carbon heating up our planet is not cars or factories, it's farming. So you're making healthier food, healing the planet, and making a profit. That's a business. Does it solve world hunger? No. Does it reduce the cost of making food? Yes. Is that part of that? Yes, but you have to wear it from a business hat. You know, I don't understand friends of mine who want to be the guy with $300 billion, okay? I don't get it. Why wait until you're dead to give that money to charity? Believe me, that's why I don't do it that way. But I do believe the purpose of a business is a business. So many people pitch these things that are well-intentioned, but they're not sustainable. So from a financial standpoint, so you have to marry the two. The fact that our robots as a service is cheaper than spraying chemicals, we had no resistance from farmers. In the US, we use acres. I don't know how it translates to hectares, but of row crops, these things can do. We have 300 million acres of row crops in just the US market. The impact that this can have on reducing the warming of the planet is more than having a bunch of world leaders fly in on private jets every year to talk about bullshit.
And I
Thank
think
you, Jay.
also, yeah, and I think also it's it's a philosophical question. We have more and more people living on the planet. It's not sustainable, but we don't know. And so some people say the problem is growth. So we need to cut that. We need to do less growth. We need to degrowth. So in order to solve the problem. But degrowing means what? When you're 7 billion and growing at a fast pace because you have a lot of poor countries that are producing a lot of people, because people needs to be educated to have only 1 or 2 kids instead of having 10 kids, you know, and I know that because I'm Moroccan. So I know that poor families, they were tending to have 10 kids in order to have one that succeed and will sustain the family. It's sad, but it's survival mode for these people. So I think, like Jay, that technology and innovation will solve problems. And you know, there was a debate last week where a guy from the World Bank or NATO or UN said we need only $6 billion to solve hunger in the world. And Elon Musk, which is one of the biggest disruptor in the world, say, oh, if it's only 6 billion and you can prove it to me, I will give them. So they tried to do a report that they give to him. We're going to have the answer soon, I guess. But they worked on that. And me, I was like, if it's only 6 billion, why the UN didn't do it? You know, 6 billion on the world scale is nothing. So I think that solving the hunger it's not a matter of money. I think it's a matter of governance and things. I lived in Africa for more than 20 years. I know very well this continent. It's not just money. It's not a capitalism model, the problem. Not at all. It's about solving problems and finding innovation way. No doubt we polluted the planet the last 30 years, and now I can tell you that innovation will solve these problems. But pollution comes in very poor countries. You know, I'm a diver. I dive a lot, and I'm panicked when I found, you know, plastic around the fishes and everything. But that comes from what? People throwing garbage in rivers that finish in things, and they put that in rivers because they don't have the infrastructure to collect all the plastic and everything. So it's how do we solve poverty? And we haven't found anything better than capitalism to do that for now. But it's a philosophical question. I don't think there's one answer to that.
Thank you for your answers.
Next question.
Big problem. Yeah, next question. We have a question. I think it's when you talked, Jay, about the skills of communication. So I read it. I learned public speaking at Toastmasters International. Maybe you know that, but few people know this organization in France. Could you please tell us what do you think about this skill?
I'm a moron, and I make a living by being able to speak. At the end of the day, it's the most important skill you can have. Now, I know many people have a fear of public speaking. This gets back to disrupting yourself. In surveys at a funeral, most people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. That's how much afraid people are of public speaking. But think of what a powerful tool it is. If you go and speak in whatever field you're in at some industry conference, you're instantly communicating to 50, 100, 1,000 leaders of your industry. And then the second you get done speaking, they're all coming to you. You're getting the business and the leads. I've been on the road for 30 years speaking at every major conference because I've heard what I'm going to say. I know the jokes already, but it's who comes up to me afterwards that changes my life. You get to meet fascinating people. People, you know, I've had people come up to me and I'm like, wait a second, don't leave the room until I can write you a check and get a piece of your company. I mean, so you can always figure something out. And there are so many opportunities nowadays with meetups to find other people fresh out of school that have what I call half an idea. You don't need a whole idea. You have a half an idea. Get somebody else with the other half. And, at the end of the day, you put together a team that has something that nobody walked into the room with, but you leave with something that works. So, yeah, Toastmasters can teach that. I was part of the team that created the first TEDx. TED was a conference where it was wonderful, but it was a bunch of rich white guys sitting around being entertained by other rich white guys and really didn't help the planet any. So I came with this idea of why don't we allow others? And we did the first one at the University of Southern California, where they bought tickets, and each ticket that was sold to a rich person bought 2 seats. One was for a student. And now TEDx is everywhere in the world. Anyone can throw one. You can go on the website. It's nonprofit. You can figure out how to do it. Very specific way of speaking. And billions of people end up watching those talks. So you can really catapult your career, your business, whatever, by really doing a well-rehearsed and planned out TEDx. It's a powerful tool. The other one that I will tell you is it used to be big media companies control the media. You had somebody that owned the major newspaper in Paris, somebody that owns the TV, somebody that owns the radio. Podcasting is the ultimate democratizer. There are thousands of podcasts on all kinds of niche topics. So if you can start being a guest on podcasts, everybody will learn about your company. I mean, our little farming company, Greenfield Robotics, once we started having the CEO go out on these things, you find like-minded people that want to solve things about farming, and you find globally that there is a base of people and capital to build businesses and solve these major issues. So any topic that you have, you can find that combination of conferences and podcasts to reach that audience.
Okay, thanks. Ilan, you want to say something about that, or it's okay?
I think I completely agree with everything was said. So
okay, thank you.
But yes, it's a very important skill, of course.
Don't be shy with the questions. You have no idea what it costs a corporation to ask me a question. So
to ask question. We have just one, but I don't know what is. I read it. Maybe you can. How do you know that the idea would be worthwhile then? Maybe the question would be.
Oh, how do you know an idea is going to be worldwide and take off? Really easy question.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to be like Jesus and get some disciples. Okay, you got to find customers. Okay, not ask your grandma, is this a good idea? More entrepreneurs are killed by kindness than criticism. You got to find somebody, would you pay for this? And when they tell you no, ask why. So the purpose is to have people to shoot down your idea, to kill it, because the market will educate you. And if you wait till you build it to find out these answers, you will have gone through all your capital. So I have this approach to try to get as many potential customers to tell you why it sucks. And when you finally get it to that point, what I call a zombie idea, an idea that nobody can kill, then go to raise money, because it's bulletproof. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect in the market, but you will address every issue that any investor would come up with, and you have a better shot of then responding. And then if it can be measured, it can be improved. So figure out what are the key things that you want to measure in your business. And everybody, I see these decks with unbelievable, because everybody can make a chart nowadays with software. But it usually comes down to one figure. How's a hotel doing? It's an occupancy rate. Okay? That's all you have to know. Everything else you can adjust. So every business is pretty simple. What's your customer acquisition cost? Okay? How many people are there? Because once you can prove in the smallest possible market that we can acquire a customer for €1 and we make a lifetime of 10 euros on them, there's 1,000 places you can go to get capital to scale, because it's like betting on a rigged race. I know no matter how much money I give you, it makes 10x back. Who wouldn't do that? But you'll only get that data by being in the market and making something that gets better to the point that it has a positive growth curve.
Just to jump in, maybe talk, Jay, about the exercises about generating idea every day from the book.
So I'm going to tell everybody here an idea that by the end of the month, you will have more good ideas for businesses than any VC firm gets pitched. And it's called my 3 problems a day for 30 days. Today, write down 3 problems in your life. It's easy. I'll give you one. Traffic, okay? 3 basic problems. But you have to do this every day for a month. So the first day, the second day, by the 3rd day, most people are going, I don't have any more problems. Because we live our life on autopilot and we don't think of the moment by moment inconveniences that we've just accepted. The purpose of this experiment is to take the blinders off and realize the problem. So a guy named Larry Tversky, who wrote me and became friends, he was doing this 30-day thing. And he's getting up one morning, he's taking his medicine, and the phone rings. He gets off the phone, he goes, did I take my pill? If I took it and I take 2, that's bad. If I don't take it and I didn't take it, that's also bad. I have a problem. So at the end of the month, you're going to sort your 90 problems along 2 axes, which goes back to the last question. One is, what is the biggest total addressable market? Business schools speak for what's got the most customers. And the other is equally important. What are you most passionate about? So if it's something that helps solve people, some cause thing that you care about, that'll get you through the rough spots. So he thought about this, and he ended up taking a little kid's toy watch that costs about 25 cents, and he puts it on the pill bottle. So every time you open it, it says, oh, I opened it 5 minutes ago, or I opened it 8 hours ago. Then he added Bluetooth, so I now know whether grandma took her medicine. And he sold hundreds of millions of these timer caps all over the world. It comes from that one problem. 2 guys were in their car in Tel Aviv in traffic. If you haven't been to Tel Aviv, bad traffic, but nothing like Los Angeles, okay? And they go, wait a second. The phone company knows where my phone is. That means it knows where the other guy's phone is. So my phone tells one guy to go left and the other guy goes right. There's no more traffic. That was the beginning of Waze. Reed Hastings rented a movie from Blockbuster. That was the biggest video rental in the US, and he forgot to return it. And they charged him $40. And he's like, this is insane. There's got to be a better way. That problem led him to start Netflix. So it's really about finding that one problem and then realizing other people have the same problems. So if you have problems in your life, you're halfway there to success. If you don't have any problems, nothing we can do for you.
Thank you, Jay.
Funny, because I invest company only on this couple. Is your solution is it a solution to a problem, or is it just fancy, or is it? So I saw a lot of things with the blockchain, which was a very buzzword at some times and everything, and people were arriving and saying, okay, I'm going to do supply chain and blockchain. Say, what for? Say, I don't know, it's cool, so I'm going to secure a transaction between supply orders. Say, I don't have any problem with my suppliers sending me orders. Why do you want to secure that? I receive orders from a supplier, I fulfill them, I ship the thing. I don't have problems. So it's super fancy, it's super cool. Technologically, it's very smart, but I have no problems. So
yeah, I'm similar to you. There are people that invest in businesses that don't have a clue of how they're going to monetize. If you don't know how you're going to make money, to me, that's called a charity. Okay. I don't invest in charity. But if you're solving a problem, you don't have to have the profit margin in the beginning. You don't have to know all those pieces. You just have to know that it's a massive problem, that there's something that somebody already invented that you can then use in your industry. It's not like you have to invent, something whole cloth. You're not Gutenberg. We have this myth that Gutenberg invented the printing press. The biggest lie we've ever been taught. Shortest version of the story, 2,000 years ago, the Greeks got tired of getting carpal tunnel from squeezing olives to make olive oil, and they made an olive press. Europe was educating slowly back then. It took till 1500 for somebody to say, let's make a big olive press, put grapes in, and now we can make more wine. So in the 1500s, suddenly everybody's making Rieslings in Germany. They made more wine 500 years ago than they do today, and there weren't a lot of people. So every vintner went broke. So now there's all these leftover wine presses sitting around. And Gutenberg says, I can put that to use. And that's literally what you're going to do today. Somebody else is inventing the phone, the app, the 5G, all these tools, the hard, heavy lifting, the witchcraft. One of my clients, one of the major companies that you know, is coming out with augmented reality contact lenses. It's witchcraft. It's the science is beyond me. But coming up with the use case that solves a business issue, that's easy. And that's all you have to do. And when you have an idea that impacts a lot of people, you will see once you start talking about it, everybody coming out of the woodwork wanting to do it and helping and making it happen. And then when you're successful, you're going to spend the rest of your life having people walk up to you and go, oh yeah, I had that same idea. Really? And did you do anything about it? Like, most people just think the idea is the hard part. The idea, as you said, that's the easy part. It's all about sticking with it and seeing it through.
Yeah, something we were
Great, thank you.
We were talking earlier about world hunger. We were talking earlier about pollution and everything. It's the same thing. It's a huge problem. We need to solve it. But first, we need to acknowledge it and solve it. It's not about money. It's about the people that will take this problem and propose solutions. So, yeah, we need that. We need to have people involved in that. It's the money is there. When the UN said we only need 6 billion to do that, it's incredible for me that we with the COVID in France, we had the new debt of 500 billion euros, 500 billion. So it means that we can, even if it's 6 billion a year, we could have feed millions of people for 100 years. So I don't think it's a matter of money. I think it's a matter of people taking the problem very seriously and trying to solve it.
Yeah, a stat that I saw recently, we took all the world's billionaires, took all their money, which is in the trillions now, that would fund the US government for 9 months. Like, it's not money. It's really about disrupting how we think and how we can change society by incremental improvement, which is the selfish reason why I write these books. The more people that are solving problems, the better it makes my world and my life, because entrepreneurs improve life. It's as simple as that.
Thanks, Jay. That's a great transition to Aurélie's question, actually, which I will ask and maybe rephrase a little bit. But Aurélie says, when we think that there are the GAFAs and other very big companies, how can that still encourage people to start something when there are all these big kids on the block?
Okay.
They all started in the garage.
Of the original Fortune 500 companies, there's only 11 left, okay? So big is big and slow like dinosaurs. They're the last ones you have to be concerned about. Because here's the thing, they're not going to be scared of you. They're not going to try to put you out of business. They're not going to try to do anything. I have a friend who woke up one day, this was years ago, and realized people weren't tying up their dogs in their backyard anymore. Dogs were living in the house and were part of the family. And he said, you know, you're going to feed a family member better than you would feed a barnyard animal. So he invented this idea of premium dog food. His wholesale price of his dog food was 2x the retail price of the big brand that was all over the globe. I mean, an insane idea. But he created a new category. He was the largest acquisition Procter & Gamble ever made. He had no investors, was the sole owner, and sold it for several $billions in the 1980s. So The big companies, since I'm never going to be a public CEO again, there's no amount of money that could get me to do that again. Talk for another day. Let me tell you why it's so easy to compete with these guys. You've heard CEOs talk about they care about the shareholders, they care about the employees, they care about the environment. A CEO's job is to care about what the board tells them to care about, which is moving the stock price. So every CEO is on a 16-week quarterly hamster wheel. If I hit this magic number, they back up the money truck to my house and pour money on me, okay? That's all you think about. You will destroy the long-term value of the company. You will cut engineering, you will cut R&D, you will do everything because you'll make so much money in 16 weeks that you'll never work again in your life. And if you look at the lifetime of CEOs that are not founders, it's kind of like a piece of brie cheese. It doesn't last very long. You get an expiration date. Knowing that they're going to cut any costs, that also means that big company, like let's take a giant car maker like Ford or GM, they can't take the years of losses of building up. We're going to figure out how to make an electric car and self-driving and have thousands of people working on something that doesn't make any money. It's much easier for the CEO to come in and do an acquisition and just buy the thing. That's why people will overpay for startups, because it keeps the CEO's job. So those big companies aren't your enemy. They may be your quickest exit because they're not set up to innovate anymore. They're not set up to come up with new products internally. Google owned search on the desktop. They had the most profitable business model in the history of mankind, which makes you sleepy and arrogant. And one day they woke up and nobody's searching anymore. They're all doing their searching here. Had they not bought Android, they'd be gone. That's why they're all spending tens of billions of dollars to make sure that they don't miss the glasses. So don't worry about the big guys. They're not worried about you.
Great.
No, and also there's another thing. Don't be afraid of the big guys. That's so true. But also use them, because now it's so much easier to use everything that we have to start. When I think about Google, Facebook, they didn't exist when I started. So I didn't have these digital communication marketing tools. We didn't have Shopify. If you had Shopify, I don't think I will have done all this development, everything. So today, if you want to run an e-commerce company, it costs only $30 a month, and you have a connector to Facebook, and you can do a lot of things. There's
and you had AWS.
This guy, yeah.
When you started, you had to have a room. I'll tell you the thing that I hated in the early days of e-commerce is there'd be a room with racks and racks and racks of hardware, and one of your techies says, we need more. I have to just say, yes, I have no idea what all these things do, and they cost a fortune. Now you can just rent what you need from Amazon's cloud. Amazon makes most of their money from the cloud business, not from the incredible complexity of sending and shipping and selling stuff. And what's interesting is their cloud was a cost center. To build their e-commerce thing, they had to make a giant room with tons of racks that got bigger and bigger. And one day, not the CEO, the person running that said, hey, boss, we got extra capacity and we can do this cheaper than anybody else. Why don't we make this something that we sell? And because the founder was still the boss, he said yes. And that's the difference between companies where the founder is still in charge and somebody that could play politics to take over. Founders are willing to say, you're right, you had a good idea. So if you're going to take a job,
Jay.
Go somewhere where the founder's still there.
Okay, so everyone's going to come to you now, to both of you, actually. I think we're going to wrap up this session. Thank you very much to both of you from California and from France for getting into this exchange. Thank you for the audience for their questions. I think we're just, every one of us now is going to get out with this, let's disrupt myself. So we're going to run thousands of ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion, for setting this up. Thank you, Naufal, for
Yes.
getting us into
Thank you very
in
much,
touch
Jennifer.
with Jay. Thank you, Ilan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And bye, everybody.